Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Village of Gurnee Planning and Zoning Board for this Wednesday, September 20, 2023. Joanne, could we have roll call?
Present.
Here. Here.
Present. We do have a quorum. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our meeting that was held back on the 6th of September. I've got a couple changes. In item number 4, the first line, it says Mr. Bernal, it was really Ms. And on the next page, the paragraph that starts with Mr. Sula, I didn't make any comments related to the location of the proposed establishment. My comment was strictly related to, I didn't have any issue with the lighting because I viewed it more of as an architectural element as opposed to a sign.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any changes or comments? If not, a motion to approve as revised would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you, Ted.
Yes.
Moved by Mr. Campbell,
Second.
second by Mr. Norntop. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a proposed Zaldivar Driving School to be located at 4262 Old Grand. Tracy, do you have this, or Audrey?
Audrey, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Hugo Zaldivar is seeking a special use permit to open a driving school, which is classified as an educational facility or vocational by code in Suite C of 4262 Old Grand Avenue in the C2 Community Commercial District. The driving school will occupy a 738 square feet tenant space in an 80-unit multi-tenant building. The tenant space will include an office and a classroom accommodating up to 20 students. Courses will be taught online for adults in the and in classroom for teenagers. The in-person classes will be on Mondays and Wednesdays from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. At any given time, 2 employees will be in the office and 2 employees with 2 cars will manage the road sessions. The cars will be parked off-site outside of the school's operational hours. The site has 27 striped off-street parking spaces, which does not currently meet parking code requirements of 30 stalls due to a change in the codes when the building, since the building was originally constructed. To occupy the unit, the driving school requires 14 more parking spaces. So the petitioners also are requesting approval of a parking modification for reduced number of off-street parking spaces on site. This modification is requested because, number one, the school operates in the evenings on only 2 nights for 4 hours each night when most of the businesses are closed. Number two, the school will not have any business vehicles parked on the site as the school cars will be driven home at night. And number 3 and 4, adults use the online training and teenagers will attend in-person classes who will be picked up and dropped off as they cannot legally drive. And number 5, there is on-site parking spaces along Old Grand Avenue. And number 6, the property owner has agreed to stripe 2 to 3 parking spaces on site should the PZB have concerns. Please note that the PZB has a decision-making authority in the parking modification matter. The petitioners are here also, as well as the property owner, and they will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Audrey. As this is a public hearing, I would request anybody from the petitioner or anyone else who cares to ask questions or give testimony to please stand and be sworn in by the village attorney. So if you're going to say something, please stand and
Promise the testimony you're about to give. Promise the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do.
At this time, I'll turn the floor over to the petitioner. If you could please use the microphones in the center of the aisle there and begin by stating your name and affiliation for the record. Thank you.
My name is Hugo Saldivar. I'm a resident of Gurnee, and I am applying for the special permit for the Saldivar Driving School. As stated, we are seeking the Secretary of State approval as well as pending based on the Gurnee decision, so we can present it to them. So they already have approved the first stages of the school. They already been in the premises. They have a preliminary approvals. Secondary approvals is when we complete the leasing part of it and the signage and the rest of the articles for the Secretary of State. Everything else has already been clear, from the records to the vehicles inspection. Everything else pretty much cleared at this point.
You just describe a little bit more about your operation.
So we offer the service for teenagers. We were not prepared originally to offer the service for teenagers, but the Secretary of State had referred us to do that as well as part of the business. So we ended up doing the teenagers as well as adults. So requirement for the state of Illinois is to operate only 8 hours a week, office hours. So it could very well be one full 8 hours or multiple sections of 2 hours. So we choose to operate 2 days a week, 4 hours each day. And those days will be used for teaching any in classroom at that point. So we only teach in the classroom teenagers from 15 to 17 years old.
Is in a 4-hour day, is that one classroom session, or are there multiple classroom sessions, 4-hour?
It's only a 2-hour section. So we could have 2 sessions in one day based on the amount of students registered at that point. But it is a 2-hour sections. It's a requirement from the state of Illinois, yes.
2 hours.
2 hours. Mhm. So each student is required to complete a 30 hours classroom plus a 6 hours behind the wheel before they can apply for their permit. So we have a total of 6 to 7 weeks before to complete those 30 hours in the classroom. And at that point, we complete all the paperwork and submit it to the Secretary of State, and then they can apply for their permits.
Thank you. I'll just share a concern. And I really don't see this so much as a concern over parking as I do traffic circulation, okay? And the reason I bring this up is because I'm a father of 3, and I sent 3 15-year-olds through school, private, here in Gurnee and Graysley. And both of those facilities were in, again, a strip mall type scenario, but different kind of a layout that had much different traffic flow for concerned about pickup and drop off. And I know, you know, these individuals and or their parents or guardians are not going to come and park and sit in your parking lot for 2 hours and wait for the students to come out. They come in, they drop, they go, they need to get in and they need to get out, okay? And so with this parking lot configured as it is, it's one way in, and once you get in there going nose in, you've got to get turned around and get nose out to get turned around. So, you know, if there happens to be a nice block or chunk of open parking spaces to do it, great, but if you happen to have even a few cars on either side, now it's a little bit more challenging with the 3-point in and out. Like I just did a spin through the lot before I came here. There's only 2, maybe 3 vehicles up toward the street. So when I got back, the backside of it, no problem. I could do a nice big loop in there, turn on and get out. So I think human nature is I pull in the lot, I get even with your door, I tell my son or daughter, okay, jump out here. So they jump out in the middle of the parking lot. Might be 2, maybe 3 cars behind me trying to get in or get out. I see points of conflict. in this, okay? So again, I know we're talking about parking, but I think it's still related to the function of the operation. And so I'm sharing the concern, and I don't know if it's really ultimately germane or not to this, but I feel that there is curbside option, I guess, if they never come into the park.
For,
They'd have to be instructed to do that, perhaps. So I'm just sharing that initial. Thank you. That's all I had at the moment.
for multiple dates, I studied the situation you have presented. I sat on the lot from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is at least 2 or 3 times a week for the last 3 weeks. And then after 4 p.m., the business is pretty much dead there, right? The computer center is pretty much closed. The hairstylist, even the folks on the medical on the end, they're pretty much gone at 4 o'clock. So I was pretty much the only car at that time. So I wasn't as concerned at that point, right? Because I saw that. Also, I'm pretty much close to the corners. They can probably drop their kids along the road. There is a lot of room in that area as well. Again, there is nobody parking at that point. They're dropping their children at our doors, and then they come back 2 hours later.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit closer to it, and I
ahead,
share, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I share my colleague's concern. I have a daughter that's in driver's ed right now, and she was doing it at Top Driver and drop off and pick up. There are 20 cars out there because it's full, and maneuvering that parking lot is not a big deal, right? There are multiple ingress and egress points, and you can go whichever direction. So if you do have 20 cars, I'm assuming you're in business to succeed, so you want your spots full. If you have 20 cars coming in and out of there at one time, how does that look? How do you manage that? 20 different vehicles pulling up ingress, and egress out of that parking lot.
There's multiple ways to do it. We can probably assist ourselves at the beginning of the class, managing the crowd coming in. Again, our doors are open before that time, so they don't have to be dropped off at the exact hours. And
Yeah, I
again,
get that, but I'm dropping out. She has a 2 o'clock class. I'm bringing her over there at 1:50, 1:55.
Correct.
So I'm not bringing her over there a half hour early, right? And I get it. There is a need. She couldn't even get in to finish up her couple of drives that she needed to finish. She has to go out to Lake Villa to finish this up. So I don't think your business is going to do poorly. I think it's going to actually do very well. And that's just my concern. You're going to do well. And how do you manage this traffic flow that inevitably will happen as your business grows? And I'm assuming you're in business to grow. So then you start expanding into other days. How do you manage that when in all of the other days that you start to manage classes?
the student classes will only be managed on those 2 days.
So if you have more demand, you're not going to expand?
There is always a waiting list for all the students, just like every other school has. They have fixed schedules, and then the students are scheduled accordingly, right? And then managing the 20 students that come in on a daily basis, as I stated earlier, there is not that many cars on that parking lot at that point after 4
It
p.m.
could be up to 40 though, right? Because they're 2-hour classes.
Right.
So you could potentially have 40 cars coming back and forth on any given
Right.
day.
It's potential, like I said, the business is starting, and at this point, we don't have any kind of booking, right? But the booking could come. We could have 2 sessions back to back. You're absolutely right. But at that point, at 6 o'clock, the parking lot is totally empty at that point. At 3:30, 4 o'clock, we can see 1 or 2 cars remain on the lot. But after 4 o'clock, like I said earlier, in my audits that I have done prior to speaking to the property owner, there wasn't any traffic at all in that zone, right? So I wasn't as concerned.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the parking. I think you and the owners of the property can work that out, stripe 2, 3 more spaces, whatever the ordinance allows. That's my only concern. I can probably get past it, but I'm just voicing that concern. That
I
have.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
We also will look for additional ways to help in that regards, right? We could probably work something out ourselves, directing people at that point, right? Doing a welcome session at that point. So there's multiple ways to handle it. Old Grand Avenue has a lot of room along on the right side. So I think we could work something out in that regards as far as welcoming the students at that point, so they don't have to get on the lot.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, we can
If
work
you-
something
you know,
out.
If this
to-
goes forward, you're going
to
to have to figure out
alleviate that
some
traffic,
type of traffic management
Yeah,
is what I guess we're getting at. And I don't know what that is. That's not what,
we have two employees at that point. We have the administrator and then the instructor at that point, right? So, and they not doing anything at that point, so they can probably help out in that regards. Definitely. I do appreciate your concern, sir.
I don't need to add a whole lot because that was my only concern also. It's the only thing I underlined in red. You're accommodating 20, up to 20 students, and they'll all be coming and going at pretty much the same time. So, yeah, I think there's plenty of parking to accommodate the businesses that are there because they all have very limited clientele. But I never even thought about in between two sessions, where you end up having 40 cars coming and going at the same time. That would be my only concern. There is a way to drop the curb going into the parking lot, because even if the parking lot's empty, once 20 cars start pulling in there, it's not going to be empty anymore.
Doing a
They're
three-pointer
going
might
to
be
be trying to
complicated.
turn around
I agree
and
with you.
get out of there. So that's my only concern.
And I believe all the commissioners have said what my concerns are as well, so.
Yeah, when Tracy was up here whispering in my ear, she had a very good suggestion on how to deal with the 40 at a time, and perhaps instead of doing 4 to 8, do like 4 to 8:30, so you have some sort of a,
We could space it
buffer
out. That's
between-
another idea. It's greatly appreciated. We
to at
could
least-
done that. Leave a 15 minutes
yeah, to at least alleviate.
window in there, or 30 minutes window, yes.
Yeah, to at least alleviate the possibility of 40 people trying to.
Yeah, I can definitely change that right out.
You know, I concur that, you know, the number of parking places per se is not an issue in my mind, because nobody's going to be staying there.
The only reason why we went with the 4 hours is to comply with the minimum amount of office hours from the Secretary of State. But the Secretary of State doesn't tell any business how long they gotta be open. We've been an expert driving in the city of Pot Ridge. They're open pretty much 8 hours a day, right? That's the minimum requirement, and we were just trying to comply with that. We definitely could be open 4.5 to 5 hours on those 2 days and leave that half-hour window in between the two sessions to alleviate some of the traffic jam, certainly.
So I don't have a problem per se with the number of parking places, but the circulation aspect of it is giving me a little bit of pause. I mean, I've seen other situations in town where there's, you know, quote unquote, a dead end, you know, multiple space parking area, but in some cases, there's like a hashed out area at the very end, so that there is a designated area for someone to do the maneuvering to get out of there. Okay, I have a question about the classroom size. 300 square feet seems kind of tight for me for 20 people. Are there any standards in terms of what's recommended for that sort of a setting?
What was the size? 300 what?
300 square feet for,
300 square feet is the minimum requirement from the Secretary of State, but in this case, we got close to,
Yeah, but how much of that space is, I mean, the way I read the materials, 300 square feet was the actual setting where there's going to be chairs and AV equipment and the instructor. It just seems tight to me.
I can
The
indicate,
Secretary of State personnel came over and personally measured that out. We are only using about 170 feet for the office space on the front end, and then the rest of it, 500 plus feet, is the classroom, as it is. The Secretary of State minimum requirement for the classroom is 300 square feet, as well as 150 for the office. So they came over and personally, two of the state employees came over to the facility and personally went through the entire facility and approved it as it is. So we are meeting the requirements.
Yeah, Tracy.
I was just going to say that coincides with our fire department. They figure 15 square feet per chair, table area, so 15 square feet times 20 is 300 square feet, so,
Okay, so it would
It
have the blessing of
matches.
our public safety
right.
folks, okay. All right. Any other first-round questions from commissioners? At this time, I'll open the floor to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would care to make a comment or ask a question? Okay. Close the floor to the public. Next round of questions. Dave, did you have some? No?
No.
Okay. You know, personally, I think there is a need to have outside of the Warren High School district ability for kids to learn how to drive. I mean, I had two kids that went through the process, and both of mine went through a public agency, and I was one of those people that wanted them to get their permit as close to the time they turned 15 as possible to not to rush them out of the house or anything, but just to get them as much of, supervised practice time as possible. And I think there's a good need for it in the community. So
I did have one question
Sure.
for, just, if we go forward with the motion, can we modify the motion to say that there has to be a minimum of a 30-minute break between first session and second session of the day?
yeah,
To
as long
permit,
as, is that agreeable to you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
In that nature, I think that would alleviate a lot of our concerns.
Okay, and just as a reminder, we need two separate motions. We need one in the form of a recommendation to the village board for a special use permit, and we need a second motion to waive the minimum number of space requirements. And that would be in the form of an approval, because we have authority to do that. Okay. Anybody like to start? Todd?
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay. A motion to forward a favorable recommendation on the petition of Zadavar Driving School for a special use permit to allow the establishment to operate of an educational facility vocational at 4262 Old Grand Avenue, Suite C, in substantial conformance with the submitted material and testimony provided to the Planning and Zoning Board on this date, September 2023, and that the area north of the building be striped to accommodate 2 to 3 code-compliant parking stalls, and finally that there has to be a minimum of 30 minutes between school sessions to permit the easily entrance and ingress and egress of students from the parking lot.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Papp. Any discussions? Joanne, could we have roll call, please?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. As you know, we are a recommending body to the village board, and the village board will make the final decision on the special use permit. All right, and then we need one in the form of a the approval for the reduction in required parking spaces. Go ahead, Dane.
Motion to approve the request by Zadavar Driving School for reduced shared parking to allow the establishment of an educational facility vocational at 4262 Old Grand Avenue, Suite C, in substantial conformance with the submitted plan.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, was that you, Todd? Mr. Campbell. Joanne, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Good luck with the project. Like I said,
Thank you.
it's a needed resource in the community.
Thank you. Ever since the pandemic came by, right, the needs for the driving school increased. So it has been a lot of wait for a lot of parents. So we saw that business opportunity. This idea started in 2019 for us.
Wow.
And then when the pandemic came in, we got stopped because the Secretary of State was not sending anybody out at that point. And we've been slowly going right back at it. But we thank you for the opportunity to stand in front of you guys and have a good one.
Yeah, good, thank you. You too. Next meeting on the calendar is the 4th of October. Are we going to have anything?
We have two informals tentatively set, so I would imagine that one of them will come through, at least, if not both, so we will have a meeting.
Okay, all right, great. So see you on the 4th. I'll open the floor to public comment for anything that was not on the agenda this evening. Close the floor to the public. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Nornthoff. Second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.